the House will be in order. Prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. Help us this day to draw closer to you so that with your Spirit and aware of your presence among us, we may all face the tasks of this day. Bless the members of the People's House. Help them to think clearly, speak confidently, and act courageously in the belief that all noble service is based upon patience, truth, and love. May these decisive days through which we are living make them genuine enough to maintain their integrity, great enough to be humble, and good enough to keep their faith, always regarding public office as a sacred trust. Give them the wisdom and the courage to fail not their fellow citizens nor you. And may all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
To address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman asks unanimous consent to address.
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in western North Carolina and my neighbors and I are really upset about what's happening at the price of gasoline at the pumps. What we see out of this administration and what we see out of some extreme environmentalists is an unwillingness to tap our natural resources to relieve the price of the pumps today. We've seen out of this administration Solyndra. We've seen scandal after scandal with this green energy policy lending coming out of the stimulus from a couple of years ago and out of liberal policies in Washington. What my constituents want to see is real expiration so that we can lower the price at the pumps. That's what we deserve, and that's the action that I ask this administration to take.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, here we go again. This week, the House will vote on yet another Republican plan to end Medicare as we know it. The American seniors have given a lifetime of service to our nation. They deserve better than to be left out in the cold. If it becomes law, the Republican budget will end Medicare guarantee of secured health coverage for our seniors and replace Medicare with voucher system that would instead give our seniors a premium support payment. Even worse, the Republican budget gives new tax breaks to millionaires, billionaires, and big oil companies. Our economists agree the Republican budget plan would destroy 4.1 million American jobs by the end of 2014. Last year, the American people weren't fooled by the dangerous and unfair House Republican budget. If we don't work for the first time, it's not going to work this time. Let us work together, and I state, let us work together on a bipartisan budget that does not favor the super rich over seniors and the middle class. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Nebraska rise? Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent?
Yes.
Recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to discuss the budget, contrasting the Republican plan, which would actually strengthen and extend Medicare, and the President's plan that would actually maybe allow the Medicare to go bankrupt only 2 years later than it would otherwise. One particular provision in the President's budget, a cut in reimbursements to critical access hospitals, would endanger access to nearby hospital care for millions of seniors, including those served by the 48 critical access facilities in Nebraska's 3rd District. However, the Republican budget provides an alternative which ensures access to care without relying on arbitrary cuts. Our plan would also focus federal support, future federal support, on the sick and the poor while ensuring no change for those at or near retirement. Madam Speaker, inaction now will only guarantee Medicare is more problematic in future years. We must act now to ensure it remains solvent for those who depend on it most. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise to express my deep concerns about the Postal Service's facility closure process. Testimony at a recent Postal Regulatory Commission hearing brought to light details of a study kept secret because the projected billions of dollars in losses despite facility closures. It also revealed mail volume would take a huge hit due to service standard changes. Yet the Postal Service has no plans to change its course. Further proof that the Postal Service is operating under an ill-conceived decide now, justify later strategy. The Buffalo Mail Processing Facility recently developed a training session for postal employees that is now the template for a national model. Surprisingly, this facility is scheduled for closing. It doesn't make any sense. My colleague Jerry Connolly is asking the Postal Service to release the full results from this study, and I agree. We should not and cannot stand by and watch these facilities close without taking all facts into account. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition? Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, President Obama's job-killing EPA is at it again. Last year, the EPA proposed a rule on manganese alloys production that would close down the last 2 manganese alloy production facilities in America, costing over 500 direct American jobs and thousands of indirect jobs. One of the facilities is in my hometown of Marietta, Ohio. These manganese alloys are vital raw components to the steel industry and are used in a wide variety of industries, including defense and the automotive industry, just to name a few. The proposed EPA rule would require scientifically unproven and costly process controls to be installed on the two facilities, and the EPA has ignored the warnings that if the proposed rule is finalized, it will not be economically feasible for these plants to continue to operate. Furthermore, if this rule is finalized, American steel companies will be forced to import this vital raw material from China or other foreign sources. Today, I will begin work with my House colleagues to ensure the EPA does not go forward with this job-killing rule. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota seek recognition?
1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to bring an important concern to my colleagues. Every one of us here has a sacred commitment to care for those warriors who are willing to serve us overseas. And one of our major concerns is making sure they're employed when they return back home. What's alarming is the Department of Defense recently issued a change in their policy that will undermine our ability to do that. I'm referring to the Department of Defense Post-Deployment Mobilization Respite Account. This important policy is designed to give our brave warriors sufficient time to transition back into the private sector. PDMRA, as it's called, is an important tool that gives them that opportunity. The change by the DoD reduces the number of paid transition days that were promised to our men and women after they deployed to the war zone. Halfway through, for many of them, their 3rd or 4th deployments, now taking that back when their plans were set this spring when they returned home. While they're in Iraq and Afghanistan, that is certainly not the right thing to do. Every single one of us wants to balance the budget and must focus on that, simply not on the backs of veterans and warriors serving this nation. I ask my colleagues to join me in asking the Department of Defense to reverse course on this policy, hire our veterans, and keep our moral commitment to them. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition? Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize Dr. Gerald Swain, President of Williams Baptist College in Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. After 48 years of service to Williams Baptist, Dr. Swain has announced his retirement, and although he'll no longer be on campus every day, his influence will certainly be felt there for years to come. Dr. Swain started his career at Williams Baptist as a professor of history, government, and economics. In 1973, he became academic dean of the college and has also held the titles of vice president for academic affairs and executive vice president. In 1995, he agreed to become the 5th president of Williams Baptist, a role he has filled since that time. Dr. Swain is stepping down after presiding over a transformation of the Williams campus. Since the late 1990s, nearly every building on the campus has either been newly constructed or extensively renovated. Under Dr. Swain, Williams Baptist has expanded its academic offerings as well as its academic reputation. It broke into the top tier of U.S. News & World Report college rankings in 2010 and climbed in the rankings again this year. Madam Speaker, today we honor Dr. Gerald Swain for his 48 years of service to Williams Baptist College and the countless lives he's changed. I yield back.
For what purposes the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House in 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, the Republican budget cuts at least $3.3 trillion from low-income programs over the next 10 years, while it increases the defense budget. It reduces taxes to a level that will wreak havoc on the federal treasury. The rate of poverty is at its highest level in nearly 30 years. The Republican budget would increase poverty and exponentially raise the misery index for hardworking American families. The Ryan budget also wreaks havoc on seniors. The American people must know that this Republican budget, which has been endorsed by all 3 Republican presidential candidates, will end Medicare as we know it. Their plan is to get the federal government out of the Medicare program. Republicans simply want to provide seniors a small voucher to purchase Medicare insurance on the private market. Most seniors will not have the money to do that. The Ryan budget shows Medicaid cuts of $810 billion. They want to get the federal government out of the medical assistance program to low-income families and place that burden on states with an underfunded mandate. Madam Speaker, the Ryan budget is absolutely shameful and misleading. House Democrats will fight it to the end. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute, please.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, Republicans in the House have put forward a budget that ends Medicare as we know it. This is an all-out Republican assault on Medicare and our nation's middle class. Who benefits from this Republican budget? Millionaires certainly do. Think Wall Street bonus boys. This Republican budget would give them an additional tax cut of $187,000. That's for starters. Yet lower and middle class Americans, people making $20,000 to $30,000 a year, they get no tax cut at all. This Republican budget also gives away $3 trillion in tax cuts and benefits to corporations. Republicans' real priorities? Cutting the safety net, giving the super rich a handout, ignoring the damage to the deficit. The Republicans would end the promise of Medicare for both current and future beneficiaries by shifting the program to private insurance financed by vouchers. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says the Republican budget would reduce benefits to seniors and force many to spend much more than they do today. Why are the Republicans so intent on making seniors sacrifice first? Why not claw back Wall Street bonuses? I urge my colleagues to vote against the Republican budget, support the Democratic alternative, protect seniors and our middle class.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Yes, unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, on March 17th, the world lost a great spiritual leader, His Holiness Pope Shenouda III. I rise today to join the millions of Coptic Christians in mourning his death. This past Sunday, St. Mary's Coptic Church in East Brunswick, New Jersey, held a very moving memorial for the Pope. An estimated 1,000 mourners gathered in the cathedral, while thousands more listened to the service in nearby rooms. There was an outpouring of grief from people of all faiths. Leaders from many religions and sects were in attendance to pay homage to the Pope, including His Grace Bishop David, the Bishop of the Archdiocese of North America. As we mourn the loss of a great leader and purveyor of faith and religious tolerance, we remember and embrace all that the Pope has done for the Coptic community in Egypt and around the world. The beloved leader of the Coptic Christian Church has provided immeasurable contribution to further promote tolerance and interfaith dialogue in Egypt, and serves as an example of how communities of different faith can live in harmony. As Egypt continues its transition, Egyptian leaders must work together to uphold the rights of all religious communities in Egypt and end all discrimination. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Hawaii seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent, Madam Speaker, to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I read my local paper this morning and read a reference by Richard Barreca, a reporter, who said that the Affordable Care Act is known as Obamacare. At first I cringed because that's the way Republicans refer to it. But then I thought about it, and you know what? You're absolutely right. Obama cares. That's why we have that law. Think about what he looked at in 2008 and 2009. There were 50 million people who were uninsured at a cost of $116 billion a year. That could bankrupt any family. But with the Affordable Care Act, think about what you have. Women no longer have to be worried about being discriminated against as a pre-existing condition. Seniors don't have to worry. They can have preventative care, and that donut hole will close. Youth can be covered under their parents' plans to the age of 26, and small business can avail themselves of tax credit. Yes, Madam Speaker, Obama cares, as do the Democrats. I yield back the remainder of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas seek recognition? Does the gentleman seek unanimous consent? The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to again encourage my colleagues to support pro-growth economic policies that can help put Americans back to work. With over 8% unemployment and slow economic growth, many Americans are struggling to pay their bills and provide for their families. Unfortunately, many of the policies coming out of Washington over the past few years have prolonged this economic stagnation and damaged our recovery. With small businesses creating 2 out of every 3 jobs in this country, we need to support policies that keep business taxes down, eliminate costly regulations, and open up new avenues for access to capital. That's why I'm happy to support the Jobs Act. This bipartisan legislation will help new business formation, open up access to capital, and help new businesses create jobs. Madam Speaker, let's work together in bipartisan fashion on the Jobs Act and other legislation, and let's help put Americans back to work. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in strong opposition to the Ryan Republican budget that will end Medicare as we know it. Reminiscent of last year, the Republican budget provides tax breaks for the millionaires and billionaires while ending the Medicare guarantees for our seniors, sticking them with the bill for rising health care costs. The proposals in the Republican budget lack balance and jeopardize the health and economic security of our nation's seniors. The 300,000 Texas seniors who have saved almost $200 million on prescription drug costs since the Affordable Care Act was signed into law will be forced back into the prescription drug donut hole. I urge my Republican colleagues to end this attack on our seniors, as they have already been through enough, and we have given the rich too much leeway while the middle class and the poor pay the bills. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute. Provided consent.
Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, as I reflect on where this country has been in the last 10 years, I see 2 wars fought at the cost of thousands of lives and $2 to $3 trillion. Tax cuts during a time of war, something unprecedented in this country's history. And now we're seeing more of the same. A Republican budget that would increase spending on defense, despite the fact that we spend more than every other country combined on defense, that would provide tax cuts to the very wealthiest in this country. The Office of the Management of the Budget estimates that millionaires will see $150,000 in tax cuts with this budget. So who pays? Anybody who relies on medical research for a cure or to stay healthy will pay. Our education will pay. Pell Grants and Head Start for poor children to get educated will be gutted. Medicare will pay. Medicaid will pay. In my district, where highways and railways are critical, investment in those things will be gutted. We all pay if this budget becomes law. I implore my colleagues to reject the Republican budget and yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, a recent analysis of American tax revenues revealed that in 2010, as our country was recovering from the Great Recession, 93% of new income went to the top 1% of earners. That's $288 billion more exclusively for the 1%. I'm sure my friends across the aisle were outraged that 7% could go to waste on the other 99% of American families. Their solution? The Republican 1% budget, a gift basket for millionaires and billionaires. Inside is a permanent extension of the Bush tax cuts, which have created an income gap in this country on par with Cameroon and Rwanda. But the Republicans' 1% budget doesn't stop there. It gives an additional tax break of $150,000 to people earning more than $1 million a year, while dismantling Medicare and slashing education, transportation, and the social safety net to pay for it. I urge my colleagues to oppose this all-for-one and the 1% gets all budget and support a plan that reflects our nation's values of fairness and shared responsibility. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from America Samoa seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to extend and revise my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, rising gas prices are hitting families hard, adding to what is already a tough economic situation for our citizens across the nation. That is why I commend President Obama for his all-of-the-above energy strategies that include a strong commitment to domestic oil production. Oil and gas development has increased every year of the Obama administration, and domestic oil production is now at an 8-year high. Furthermore, our foreign dependence on oil is a 16-year low. Last year, we cut net oil and petroleum imports by 1 million barrels a day. President Obama has also offered millions of acres of land of lease and improved safety measures to prevent future spills. The President has also proposed opening up more undiscovered offshore oil and gas resources for development in the Gulf of Mexico. I thank President Obama for his leadership in increasing oil production, and so that our nation, our country, will depend less on imported foreign oil. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You hear a lot about the Ryan budget. I've chosen, it's just my personal thing, not to call it the Ryan budget because it becomes personal. So when I criticize it, it seems like I'm criticizing a person when I'm not. I'm criticizing the Republican Budget Committee that came out, and I'm criticizing it because 62% of all the cuts in that budget will be aimed at low-income individuals and seniors. The Medicare program is going to be threatened. The AARP sent out a notice to all of its members explaining what would happen to Medicare if it's voucherized. We are the only nation in the history of planet Earth to give tax cuts as we enter and then in the middle of a war, 2003, 2005. Giving tax cuts in the middle of a war. Last year, the 22 largest hedge fund managers earned $22 billion, and they paid only 15% on the capital dividends tax. The people who are watching this paid 27 to 30%. It's not right. We got to reject this budget.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition? The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As my constituents remind me frequently, seniors have paid into the Medicare system their whole working lives. Seniors have done so with the understanding that if they work hard and played by the rules, this country would provide for their health care needs during retirement. That is why I'm committed to working with my colleagues and the administration to ensure the survival of Medicare. And that is why I strongly oppose the Republican budget. The Republican budget would end Medicare by transforming it into a voucher program, and it would slash over $1 trillion in benefits over the next decade. So with far less money in hand, our seniors would become dependent on insurance companies to decide the fate of their health care. Insurance companies that could price our seniors out of the market or cut benefits at will. And while the Republican budget takes from seniors to cut costs, it gives millionaires an average tax cut of at least, I've seen larger numbers, $150,000 in 2014. Our seniors deserve better. I look forward to a real bipartisan effort to preserve the promise of Medicare for future generations.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, again this year, the Republican budget would end Medicare's guarantee to our seniors. The Republican budget takes aim at the very heart of our moral obligation to our seniors. Medicare has been both a blessing and a lifeline for our seniors and the disabled. Our seniors have worked a lifetime to make our country great, and we will not break our promise that Medicare will be there for them in their retirement. Medicare is at the core of our social compact. It is at the heart of what has made our nation strong. We must not turn Medicare into a voucher program. We will not. We must not balance our budget on the backs of our seniors. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition? And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the bipartisan Senate-passed Highway Transportation Reauthorization Bill, or MAP 21. We all know that in this global economy in which we now live, in order to truly be competitive, we need to have a 21st century infrastructure to match a 21st century economy. But we're not there. Our nation right now, of course, is facing a fragile economic recovery. Nowhere is that more apparent than in my home state of Rhode Island, which currently has an unemployment rate of 11%. MAP 21 will help rebuild America's economy on a stronger, more sustainable foundation. It will provide financing for critical highway and transit projects and support almost 2 million jobs, 9,000 of them right in my home state of Rhode Island. Failure to pass a long-term transportation bill could result in additional job losses, threatening our economic recovery and countless families who are barely getting by as it is. Now, the Senate has done its job. It's time for the House to do the same. Let's bring MAP 21 to a vote and move forward on the path to rebuilding our roads, our communities, and our economy. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Rhode Island yields back his time. Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, Sir. Pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on March 27, 2012 at 9:15 a.m. that the Senate agreed to, without amendment, House Concurrent Resolution 108, Appointments, U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Recorded votes on postponed questions will be taken later today. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 3606.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3606, an act to increase American job creation and economic growth by improving access to the public capital markets for emerging growth companies. Senate amendment.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Baucus, and the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Himes, each will control 20 minutes, and the Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to add any extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Jobs Act and urge the House to approve this bill today so that we can send it to the President for his immediate signature. And the President has indicated that he strongly supports the legislation. The Jobs Act is a victory for unemployed Americans who are literally crying out for jobs. It is a victory for small companies and for entrepreneurs who want Washington to reduce the red tape that stifles innovation, economic growth, and job creation. The Jobs Act will do exactly what its title says: jumpstart our economy, by creating new job opportunities for America's startup companies and small businesses. I'd ask unanimous consent that I introduce into the record some statistics on the number of jobs created by new companies. Thank you. As chairman of the Financial Services Committee, I'm proud that the Jobs Act is comprised of 6 pieces of legislation that originated in our committee and received overwhelming bipartisan support. In fact, managing this bill for the minority is the gentleman from Connecticut who was the sponsor of one of those 6 bills, and I commend Mr. Himes for his work on all of these bills. The Jobs Act is proof that Republicans and Democrats can come together and find common ground, work together, and offer legislation that will help small businesses. Small businesses are the growth engine of our economy. A study between 1985 and 2005 found that 96% of the jobs created at new companies are created within 5 years of an IPO. And this will make those companies who want to offer an IPO the opportunity to do so at a much reduced cost. Nearly 65% of new jobs traditionally are created by small businesses. Now, that's not the case in this economic recovery. Almost all the job growth has come from large corporations, which is really the opposite of what you normally see. Small businesses have not been being formed, being created, and have not been growing as they should. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is regulation. And these regulations are costly, they're time-consuming, and they're simply inhibiting the growth of small businesses. The second reason is the lack of capital. Now, there are 2 ways traditionally to raise capital. One is to go to a bank, a lending institution, and ask for a loan. Well, because of tighter lending standards, these new companies don't have a track record. So they don't have a record of generating profits. Many of them are offering new services, new products that have not really found a market or have a small market. And it is a risk involved. So when banks turn those companies down, the other path is for someone to invest in those companies. And that is exactly what this bill does. It offers those companies an opportunity to receive investments, capital investments from individuals who want to participate not only in the risk but in the reward. With the Job Act, startup companies like there's an Innovation Depot in Birmingham, Alabama. There are several startup companies with new products, new services. And it will allow those companies and companies throughout the United States, people with new ideas, new services, new products, like a Google of the future or an eBay or an Amazon. You take those companies, they didn't exist 20 years ago. Now they're the fastest growing companies in America. There are other Googles, there are other eBays, there are other Amazons, there are other Costcos, there are other Chick-fil-A's that are just waiting to come to market. And for that reason, I want to commend the Senate, and I want to thank the sponsors of this legislation. And finally, I want to salute this House for coming together when it counted and to address the lack of growth in jobs in our small businesses. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Alabama reserves his time. The gentleman from Connecticut.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now yield myself such time as I may consume.
And the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I am thrilled to be participating in the management of this debate today and want to start by thanking Chairman Backus and thanking my friends on the other side of the aisle for the bipartisan and collaborative spirit with which we moved this legislation. This is important legislation, but the process by which it moved, I think, is something that we should celebrate. This is a time, of course, when the American people are none too happy with us, but this bill was done collaboratively with the support of the President of the United States, the majority and the minority in the House, and it will be good for our economy. So I thank the Chairman for his leadership on this, the Ranking Member, and all that participated in the creation of this important legislation. As the Chairman said, this is good stuff. It has received the support of entrepreneurs, of industry associations, of people on both sides of the aisle, because it does something very, very important, which is acknowledge that regulation is always a balance. It's not always good, it's not always bad. And one of the duties of legislators and regulators is to make sure that our regulation is finely calibrated to protect us from fraud, to protect us from mortgages that blow up, to keep our air clean, to keep our water clean, but that if it's done in too ham-handed a fashion, it can compromise the vibrancy that provides so much economic opportunity in this country. Every day, this institution should be focused on finding that balance. And that's what this bill is about. It's been criticized here and there by people who I think are of the mindset that any retreat, any revisiting, any amendment to our current regulatory structure is a bad idea. That can't be the right way to think about this stuff. Regulation, like anything else, has to adapt to change with the times. And what we're doing here is particularly important, because we are talking about the regulation of small banks, which, let's face it, have a tough time competing against the big banks, and it's about our startup and emerging growth companies that may not have the free cash flow in their first couple of years of existence to completely adopt all of the regulation, the disclosure that we might expect of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. We have provided an on-ramp for entrepreneurs to, as they gain currency, as they increase their revenues, as they become more of a presence, and frankly, therefore, affect the lives of more people, to gradually work into the full regulatory structures of Sarbanes-Oxley and other regulation. And that's a good thing to do. Today in Palo Alto, there are companies that might not have made it but for this legislation. In Connecticut and Massachusetts, there are startup companies for which this legislation is going to make the difference between thriving, as the Chairman said, maybe being the next Microsoft or the next Google, and actually not making it. So I'm very happy that we have, in a bipartisan fashion, put forward this legislation which will be good for economic vibrancy and opportunity in this country. And again, thank the Chairman for his collaborative and thoughtful work on this bill. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Connecticut reserves his time. The gentleman from Alabama.
I yield this time to the chairman of the subcommittee, the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Biggert, for 2 minutes.
Gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the chairman for yielding. And Madam Speaker, the American economy has the capacity and the resilience to overcome most any obstacle. We've seen it time and time again in the face of foreign crises, natural disaster, or fiscal adversity. American entrepreneurs and job creators never stop innovating. But to harness that power and the jobs that come with it, we need to clear a path for the startups and fledgling businesses that bring new goods and ideas into the marketplace. That's the purpose of H.R. 3606, the Jumpstart Our Business Startups, or JOBS Act. This legislation package includes 6 bipartisan proposals, many of which I co-sponsored, to streamline or eliminate the regulatory and legal barriers that prevent emerging businesses from reaching out to investors, accessing capital, and selling shares on the public market. This legislation will make it possible for promising new businesses to go public and access financial opportunities that currently are limited to large corporations, and eliminates needless costs and delays imposed by SEC and other regulators. Madam Speaker, for tens of millions of Americans, including families from my suburban Chicago district, there is no priority more important or urgent than job creation. Over the last few months, unemployment has slowly receded to 8.3% nationally and 9.1% in Illinois. But Washington must pick up the pace, and that means unleashing the drive and ingenuity of hardworking Americans. I urge my colleagues to support the JOBS Act and empower American businesses to do what they do best. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Connecticut. Gentleman from Connecticut.
Continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Continues to reserve. The gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you. I'd like to inquire, as to, Madam Speaker, as to how much time remains on our side.
Gentleman from Alabama has 13.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Connecticut has 16.5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Alabama.
At this time, Madam Speaker, I'd like to recognize another Illinois Congress or an Illinois congressman, not another congresswoman, but Mr. Dole for 2 minutes.
Gentleman from Illinois, recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, I certainly want to thank the chairman for yielding, and I think it's important, and I'm delighted to be able to speak here on this bipartisan piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, as part of any jobs agenda, I believe that increased access to capital for small business is absolutely critical. That's why I'm a supporter of this Bipartisan Jobs Act. When we empower small businesses to grow and expand, we enable them to create jobs and get people back to work. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, I co-sponsored several of the bills that are in this package because they allow small businesses to increase capital formation, spur the growth of small businesses, and pave the way for our small businesses and entrepreneurs to create new jobs. 2/3 of all net new jobs, Madam Speaker, are created by small business. We have 29 million small businesses in our nation. If we can create an environment here in Washington, D.C. that enables half of those businesses to create a single job, think about where we'd be then. Finding new ways to spur the economy is not a Republican idea or a Democratic priority, but it certainly should be an American priority. As a small business owner, I know that we have to start putting people before politics and progress before partisanship, and remain focused on finding solutions for the barriers that stand in the way of entrepreneurs and job creators. I want to encourage my colleagues to support this bipartisan piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, pieces of this legislation, aspects of this bill, passed this House with over 400 votes. We hear a lot about the gridlock that's going on in Washington, D.C. When we can get legislation that passes this body with over 400 votes, that is wildly bipartisan. Things that I believe that the American public are asking for us to do. Come up with solutions to the problems that they face. To try to stem the 8.3% unemployment, which we know is much larger if we count the underemployed and those that have left the workforce. We certainly need the Senate to act. It's absolutely critical. I ask my colleagues to support this legislation, find common ground, and move our country forward.
Gentleman from Connecticut.
Continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Continues to reserve. The gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, a member of the committee who was sponsored and worked on these bills.
Gentleman from Arizona, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you to the gentleman for yielding me a couple minutes here. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the Jobs Act. Think about this. We literally started over a year ago putting together the pieces of legislation that move forward with us today. Many of them were bipartisan. Many of them had to go through subcommittee and committee and then back through more hearings and more testimony. A couple of these bills have actually been through this floor multiple times. It's been well vetted. And I hold a great appreciation because I've only been here 15 months. And this is my first opportunity to actually have a piece of legislation with multiple bills I've sponsored heading on their way to the President, hopefully after the votes today and tomorrow. And I owe a great thank you to Chairman Garrett and the committee chairman, Spencer Baucus. But I also want to share a bit of a concern. Mr. McHenry, Congressman McHenry, has a really neat portion of this bill. We call it crowdfunding. The Senate has amended that in such a way that I believe it does great damage to the goal of a much more egalitarian, technologically advanced, using the Internet way for people to invest, for being able to reach out and gain that capital for very small companies. And I'm hoping I can reach out to my friends here and saying, let's fix what the Senate did. We still belong voting for this bill. This is wonderful. We're making progress. But there are things we're going to have to do to fix this for the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Connecticut.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd yield myself such time as I would consume.
Gentleman recognized.
Thank my friend, Mr. Schweikert, with whom I've enjoyed working on this legislation. and in the spirit of bipartisanship, ultimately a bill that was designed to make it easier for small banks that Congressman Schweikert and I worked together. I would also like to highlight the work of Congressman Steve Womack of Arkansas on that bill. Found its way into this legislation under another congressman's name, but it is important and good legislation, and I continue to support it and thrilled that it's part of this. Madam Speaker, I would just take issue with one thing that my good friend from Arizona said. The crowdfunding provisions in this legislation should be subject to scrutiny and to careful regulatory oversight. When you combine the concept of the Internet and retail investors into one piece of legislation, be careful. The Senate amendment to the House crowdfunding provisions, in fact, adds more protection to small investors who might be subject to being fooled by an Internet predator. And I would just say we should be careful. We should be careful when we are talking about retail investors, the classic widows and orphans out there that are not necessarily financially sophisticated. They are not the big financial players who get labeled accredited investors or institutional investors and who frankly have the capability to take care of themselves. Retail investors who might be subject to the temptations of a deal that in fact is too good to be true offered on the Internet ought to be a cause of concern both for this body and for the regulators who ultimately will write the rules around crowdfunding. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you. This time I'd like to yield to the chairman of the subcommittee on financial institutions, a gentlelady from West Virginia, Ms. Capito, who also worked very hard on this legislation.
For how much time?
Minute.
How much time?
I'm sorry, 1 minute.
Gentlelady from West Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the chairman, and I really want to thank the whole Financial Services Committee for working together on this bill, the jobs bill, jump-starting our business startups. Our unemployment in this country is over 8%. We've got to find and make every means available to create jobs, to give those great ideas to be able to grow from small businesses to large businesses. We want to make sure that our entrepreneurs are able to find the funding to be able to grow those seeds of a business that then could flourish and grow. I mean, when we talk about some of the things that have started in this country as startups, most recently we might look at something like AOL or something like Apple or even FedEx when Fred Smith wrote that famous paper in business school that I think didn't get a very good grade that now has resulted in our FedEx. If they hadn't been able to find the funding to begin, many of them I think today would say that because of the regulatory structure, because of the inability to find funding, that they wouldn't even be able to get started today and then to grow to the thousands of jobs that they have. This has great potential. It's bipartisan. I support the Jobs Act.
Gentleman from Connecticut.
Reserve the balance of my time.
Continues to reserve. Gentleman from Alabama.
Speaker, I'd like to again inquire into the amount of time remaining on our side.
Gentleman from Alabama has 9 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Connecticut has 14.5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Alabama.
I'd like to yield an outstanding freshman on our committee, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fincher.
For how much time?
And everyone speaking on our side has worked very hard on these bills, or spent a lot of time, as have many of our Democratic colleagues.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Gentleman from Tennessee, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the chairman for his leadership and patience in working with us freshmen the last year and a half. I'm pleased to be the lead co-sponsor of H.R. 3606, the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, with Congressman John Carney from Delaware. This bill has been a bipartisan effort from the beginning, and I want to thank the gentleman from Delaware and his staff, Sam Hodis, for working with us on this bill. I also want to thank the Financial Services Committee staff, Kevin Edgar, Jason Goggins, Walton Lyles, and Chris Russell for their efforts on this legislation as well. Small businesses and entrepreneurs are the backbone of our nation and our economy. This bill puts the focus on the private sector, capitalism, and the free market, providing the jumpstart our nation's entrepreneurs and small businesses need to grow and create jobs. This is about certainty and removing government bureaucratic red tape. Our nation has seen a decline in small business startups over the last few years, which means less jobs created for American workers. The best thing our government can do right now to get our economy moving in the right direction is to help create an environment where new ideas and startup companies have a chance to grow and succeed. Title I of this bill is legislation I introduced with Congressman Carney called the Reopening American Capital Markets to Emerging Growth Companies Act. During the last 15 years, fewer and fewer startup companies have pursued initial public offerings because of burdensome costs created by a series of one-size-fits-all laws and regulations. This bill would help more small and mid-sized companies go public by creating a new category of issuers called emerging growth companies that have less than $1 billion in annual revenues when they register with the SEC and less than $700 million in public float after the IPO. Emerging growth companies will have as many as 5 years, depending on revenue size, to transition to full compliance with a variety of new regulations that are expensive and burdensome to new companies. This on-ramp status will allow small and mid-sized companies the opportunity to save on expensive compliance costs and create the cash needed to successfully grow their businesses and create American jobs. In addition, this bill would only require emerging growth companies to provide audited financial statements for the 2 years prior to registration rather than 3 years, saving many companies millions of dollars. It will also make it easier for potential investors to get access to research and company information in advance of an IPO in order to make informed decisions about investing. This is critical for small and medium-sized companies trying to raise capital that have less visibility in the marketplace. I urge my colleagues to support this bill again, send it to the President to sign, and give our small businesses and entrepreneurs the opportunity to create jobs for Americans. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Tennessee yields back. Gentleman from Connecticut.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will yield myself such time as I may consume, and thank my friend from Tennessee for his hard work on this bill, of which, as I said in my previous statement, I'm very supportive. I do want to take the opportunity, though, having heard from the gentleman from Tennessee phrases that we hear all too often, phrases like one-size-fits-all regulation and bound up in red tape. I do want to take this opportunity to remind the American people that those are phrases that sound scary. Regulation, red tape, one-size-fits-all. But what we're talking about here is protection for the American people. And in my previous statement, I made the point that we have to get the balance right. But like everybody else in this chamber, I woke up a couple of years ago to learn that 11 men were dead on a deep-sea drilling platform in the Gulf of Mexico, and an ocean was poisoned, devastating the economy of the Gulf. We've all seen what happens when you sell exploding mortgages to people who can't possibly repay them, even though the people who sold those mortgages know that. I come from a district which actually has some of the poorest air quality in the country. Why do I enumerate these things? Because they are all a failure to regulate, to provide a safe and good environment in which we can thrive. Nobody wants to see 11 men die on a deep-sea drilling platform. Nobody wants to see a return to the notion that anybody should buy a interest-only reverse amortizing mortgage that the bankers don't understand. So I said it before, I'll say it again. The balance is key. And I will oppose those who say that more regulation is always the right idea, but I will also stand up, as I have now, and say there is a balance. And the other side needs to recognize that that balance does not come from opposing and labeling red tape and obstructionism and one-size-fits-all. With that, I yield to my friend from Alabama.
And let me say this. The gentleman from Connecticut mentioned crowdfunding, and I think that was what gave us more concern than anything else. Some of the things he said about with the Internet, people making an investment being subject to fraud. And that is a concern, and the Senate addressed those concerns. I think I'd like to stress, what they amended was a very small part of this bill that dealt with crowdfunding. But it is also important to know that all the anti-fraud protection, we didn't take any of that away. But I think we're getting there. I mean, the Senate, the House, we deliberated with the White House, and we'll continue to look at crowdfunding. we'll see how this goes. And with any investment, particularly a new company, a new venture, there's a certain amount of risk. And you can't take the risk out. You take the risk out, you take the reward. But what the gentleman says, I fully appreciate. And I think that's where our committee has come together and we tried to get it right. And for the good of Americans in creating these new jobs. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Connecticut reserves his time. Gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you. At this time, I yield a gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, who's, again, this is a bill that several members work very hard on. He's very knowledgeable on these bills, and I'll yield him 4 minutes.
Gentleman from North Carolina recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the Chairman. And I appreciate the opportunity to address the crowdfunding section of this bill. 1 year ago, Oversight Chairman Darrell Issa sent a letter with 33 questions to the Securities Exchange Commission and asking them to justify outdated securities laws that restrict capital formation and stunted job growth. It was a letter that really challenged the Commission's complacency and asked them about these 80-year-old regulations that were modern at the time where the new invention was the telephone, and asked them if they would ways to update them. One question specifically asked Chairman Shapiro if she considered creating an exemption to enable everyday investors to invest with reasonable limitations in unregistered securities issued by startups. This is known as crowdfunding. At the time, I was only familiar with crowdfunding, which is a hybrid of microfinance and crowdsourcing as a charitable method. It's done around the world to billions of dollars of monies raised. For example, a local brewery in my home state of North Carolina was able to raise $44,000 on a platform called Kickstarter. Now, that's done on the charitable side, but with crowdfunding, the success we see on the charitable side can be brought over on the investor side, on the equity side of capital raising. We recognize the consequences of Dodd-Frank that limit the ability to get lending through traditional means and as a way to promote small business capital formation. Crowdfunding relieves part of that pressure. In September of last year, after countless meetings, conferences, congressional hearings, and bipartisan negotiation, I introduced the Entrepreneur Access to Capital Act. The bill was simple and direct. It offered a means of capital formation that would forego costly SEC and state registration if issuers and investors operated within reasonable limitations. Most importantly, the foundation of the legislation upheld investor protection by empowering regulators to prosecute those who participated in securities fraud or deceit. That is preserved. The Entrepreneur Access to Capital Act, our focus was on market innovation and investor protection to attract both political parties and well-known market participants to the table. As a result of that bipartisan bill, we had over 400 members on this floor voted for that bill. The President said he would sign that bill, and we sent it over to the Senate with thousands of market participants saying it was good. This year, that same language was included as a provision within this legislation, the Jobs Act. Regrettably, just before the House passed the House-passed version of the Jobs Act received her up or down vote on the Senate floor, a handful of senators misunderstood the spirit and the promise of crowdfunding, resulting in minute changes to the bill. Our essential framework is preserved for crowdfunding. Rather than recognize that crowdfunding can create new markets and opportunities for small businesses and startups, these misguided senators simply saw crowdfunding as unregulated activities. This misperception caused them to design a crowdfunding title that is riddled with burdens on issuers, investors, and intermediaries, and limits general solicitation and enhances SEC rulemaking authority. But fortunately, as I said, the basic architecture of the Entrepreneur Access to Capital Act, crowdfunding, that bipartisan measure that we took through committee markup and House floor action, is preserved. Although I'm disappointed by the ill-conceived and burdensome changes within the crowdfunding title of this bill, I stand committed to working across the aisle to make sure that we fix this after the President signs it, and that's what we intend to do. I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill and move forward.
Gentleman from Connecticut.
I yield myself 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, I salute Mr. McHenry, my friend from North Carolina, for his work on this bill, and I think it's